Good afternoon, colleagues. This is the House Committee on Appropriations, Health and Social Services Subcommittee voting session. This is our first one of the year. We have 4 bills that we are going to be voting on today, all favorable with amendment. So we're going to start with HB 1009, a bill from Delegate Chang. This is a bill titled Public Health Federally Qualified Health Centers Grant Program Recovering of Funds. We heard this bill a couple of weeks ago, I believe, from Delegate Chang. There are 2 amendments on the bill. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 allows for 15-year state right to recovery for FQHCs that are leased on or on leased property and maintains a 30-year right to recovery for owned property. Can I have a motion on the amendments? Thank you. And then a second. Great. Thank you so much. Does anyone have any discussion on the amendments? Great. Okay. So can we take a voice vote on the amendments? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Great. May I get a motion on the bill as amended? Great. Second. Thank you. The bill has been moved favorable with amendment and seconded. Any discussion on the bill as amended? Nope. Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye as well. And anyone opposed? Great. The ayes have it. HB 1009 has been passed favorable with amendments. We will now move on to let's see, we're going to do Delegate Robin Lewis's bill, which was just heard this week, HB 1434, Department of Human Services, Electronic Benefits Transfer Cards, Restoration of Benefits. There are 2 sponsor amendments to this bill. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 clarifies that the Department of Human Services shall reimburse a beneficiary for stolen benefits subject to the limitations of the state budget and establishes a work group to study and make recommendations to the General Assembly on a dedicated funding stream for the restoration of stolen benefits. Can I get a motion on the amendments, please? We're gonna move and then have discussion on the amendments before we vote on the amendments. Thank you. Second on the amendments. Thank you. Discussion. Delegate Acevedo.
Thank you. I know that during the hearing on this bill, and I appreciate the intent with which it was brought, I know there were some concerns that were expressed, particularly by the Homeless Representations Project around reimbursement and what this would do. Was that addressed in the bill? And if so, how?
Yeah, so the bill initially drafted removes the mandate on the program, so the mandatory reimbursement of EBT theft. But the amendment clarifies that it is continues to be a mandatory benefit and entitlement program subject to appropriation of dollars by both the feds and the state government. This aligns the program with the SNAP program and other federal entitlement programs, which also are entitlement programs subject to appropriation. So the current state program is broader than the existing SNAP program, and it's broader as well on EBT theft. In that it reimburses for additional categories that the federal government doesn't reimburse for. So, for example, we go further back to like earlier than what the federal government does. And then we also include TCA, stolen benefits. Those are always going to come from the general fund. They will always be appropriated for from the general fund. The remainder is subject to federal appropriations.
So a couple clarifying questions. One is it's currently an entitlement.
Yeah.
Removing that entitlement.
So so the program is currently an entitlement.
Mm-hmm.
The bill as drafted would have made it a discretionary program. The amendment restores it as an entitlement program. So it is still an entitlement program under the amendments that we are discussing right now. That we're discussing right now. We haven't voted on the amendments yet. So the amendments maintain it as an entitlement program.
Right. I got you.
Yeah.
And then the other question is there a minimum appropriation requirement in the bill?
I don't, well, let me ask council.
Like a minimum annual appropriation?
No.
There's none. Okay.
Any further questions on the amendments? Can I get a motion on the, well, we have a motion and a second. Can we get a vote and we can do, yes, please, delegate. Do you want to push your mic? I'm so.
The now amended bill, we know what the position of the advocacy groups are based on these amendments or the new bill as amended?
So these amendments were discussed in the hearing and they were opposed. Some of the groups were opposed to both amendments. Some groups favored the work group amendment, but did not favor the subject to appropriations language. So the advocacy groups were split. This is, the amendments from the sponsor really sought to strike a balance, because as drafted, as I mentioned, it makes it a discretionary program, not mandatory, not an entitlement. And so the amendment tried to maintain it as an entitlement, which the advocacy groups wanted, but it subjects it to appropriations, just like the SNAP bill is federally, just like many of our federal entitlement programs are.
Gotcha. I guess my only concern is that we're not requiring a minimum annual appropriation
Sure.
For the bill.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to hear that the entitlement was put back into the bill, right? Good. But yeah, I'd just say like the minimum annual appropriation, that's something that draws some concern for me. So I'll just share that. As far as the amendments, I mean, ideally, I'd like to see, what I just mentioned, a minimum annual appropriation to be put in there, but I also know how things are as far as the budget, but at the same time too, for some concerns that I've heard from advocacy groups and whatnot, I don't know if I feel particularly good about that. Yeah,
I understand your concerns and I understand theirs as well. I will say that, the hope is that with what DHS has been doing to try and curb theft, that the theft doesn't occur at all, right? And that we don't have any liability on the state or need to rely on the federal government, and that the beneficiaries, when they receive their original benefits, that it's never stolen from them. There is an RFP out right now from DHS. I think they're in the review stage now of proposals to create additional security on the cards themselves, which could help curb the theft, which I think is everybody's desire, right? As we heard, even I believe Delegate Grice mention his concern about repeat theft. And so the hope is that with the added protections of the new DHS system for beneficiaries, once that rolls out, plus maintaining this as an entitlement for those who do unfortunately get benefits stolen, that we're able to see a decrease in the reliance on this particular part of the fund, right? So while I hear your concern and interest in having a mandatory appropriation for this, I mean, the hope is that we never need to rely on that, right? That like if we do set a mandatory appropriation of, say, $20 million as a hypothetical number, but we appropriate those dollars, or the administration ends up setting those dollars aside, that they end up all getting reverted eventually, right? Because no theft ever occurs. That's the goal. But they're operating on 1 year of data. We appropriated something like $6 million last year, and they saw a significant increase to that, more than they expected. And so the budget allocates something like 27 million right now for that program for FY25. The administration is very committed, as all of us are, to ensuring that those who do have theft ultimately are able to get reimbursed and made whole. So with that said, do you have further questions that I can answer?
So, well, I appreciate the explanation. So if funds run out, right, that would obviously impact the program because we don't have a minimum appropriation.
Right.
Right.
So the department had to rely on a deficiency appropriation this year to help make up some of the balance from what they had predicted from their original budget request last year to what was actually spent. A huge portion, though, of the amount that was reimbursed to beneficiaries, I think the secretary said something like $22 million. The largest portion of that came from the federal government, because the feds have been reimbursing for at least like 75 to 80% of the stolen benefits. We have a more expansive program with TCA, and we go further back. But we still did have liability on the general fund that exceeded last year's appropriation. So so the hope is that the current budget amount for FY25, we get most of it back and that there's no theft, but in the scenario that there is adequate funding there to reimburse. Plus, reimburse the state shares of that program.
Gotcha.
Thank you. So Delegate Heinbaugh, I see you have nope, you do not have a question. I saw your mic light up for half a second. Okay, great. Okay, so the amendments have been moved and seconded. Do we want to do like a hand raise thing? Okay, so those in favor, please raise your hand. This is for the amendments to the bill. And I see Delegate Jones, Delegate McCaskill. Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. And the amendments have passed. So now may I get a vote or excuse me, a motion on the bill as amended? Thank you. Second. Thank you. The bill's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed, please say no. Okay, the bill has moved unanimously. Thank you. We are now going to, wait a minute, did I give you the wrong? This one goes with that one, I think. Okay, my apologies. All right, so we're now going to move on to the administration's SNAP bill. HB 183. So this is titled Human Services Food Supplement Program Summer SNAP for Children Act. The bill is favorable with amendments. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 removes the mandatory appropriation and alters the eligibility and requirements for the Human Services Careers Scholarship, which the General Assembly established last year. I'd ask for a motion on the amendments, please. Is there a motion on the amendments? Move the amendments. Is there a second? I'll second, or Delegate Heinbaugh seconds. Thank you. And so is there any discussion on the amendments to this? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of the amendments, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed to the amendments? Thank you. And now I'd like a motion on the bill as amended, please. Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. All those in favor of moving the bill favorably with amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Great. Thank you. The bill passes favorable with amendments. Now, the last bill is HB 666, lucky number. This was my bill, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program State Supplement Bill. You all might recall that this bill, as originally introduced, would have increased the minimum benefit that a beneficiary of the SNAP program receives from $23 to $95. The fiscal note was rather high on that. And so we have 2 amendments on the bill to help adjust that and make it a little bit more of a targeted program. Amendment number 1 is technical, and amendment number 2 adjusts the amount of the benefit increased by $10. So it moves it from $40 to $50, and it lowers the minimum age from 62 to 60. So this now is a benefit for targeted for seniors, and it specifically expands the eligibility now to anyone over 60 years of age. So this increased supplemental benefit will now the number of people we'd be capturing in is 2,255 or 200. 255 people on average would be eligible for this increased benefit amount. May I have a motion on the amendments? Thank you. May I have a second? Thank you. The amendments have received or have been moved and seconded. Are there any questions on the amendments? Delegate Heinbaugh.
So what does this change do to the cost? It was
Yeah,
a $48 million.
I
hit.
know.
So what is
So
it?
so much money, I know. So it actually brings the per DLS analysis and modeling, it would bring the cost of this to 4.2 million
4.2?
from 40 something.
I think it was 48.
Yeah, from 48 million down to 4.2. So by increasing the minimum allotted to seniors from $40, which is the current minimum, to $50, and lowering the eligibility age to 60. The total cost of the bill as estimated by DLS is 4.2 million.
So I just, Madam Chair, I just want to make sure I'm understanding correctly. So it was a $48 million. You're saying now it's $4.2 million?
Because so the 48 million would have increased the minimum from 23 to 95
Yeah, got it.
and applied to everybody.
Okay.
This is solely increasing the senior supplemental benefit. It's an existing program under state law, and the current senior supplement is $40. So they go from the federal minimum is 23. That's what we get from the feds. And then we have a current program that adds in $17 to every senior over the age of 62. So the current minimum that seniors get is $40 a month. It's not that much money. And so we had 5 SNAP bills that we considered in our full committee. We modeled out a number of different options that could provide targeted relief to people who really need it. And this is the proposal on the table.
Thank you. I was going to have a hard time voting for it with 48 million, but.
Understood.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So the amendments have been moved and seconded. May I get, we'll take a vote. Anyone or all those in favor of the amendments, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed to the amendments? I hear no opposition to the amendments. May I get a motion on the bill as amended? Move the bill. Okay, thank you. The bill has been moved and seconded as amended. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And anyone opposed? No opposition. Thank you all so much. That concludes our voting session for the Health and Social Services Subcommittee on Appropriations. Thank you. We are adjourned. So these bills will now